Hi, very good morning. I'm Dr. Janak Patel, MD, General Physician. All my video lectures are for mainly for educative purpose. In continuity with the previous lecture, today we'll be talking about CSF, that is cerebrospinal fluid, formation, circulation, functions, etc. aspect of cerebrospinal fluid. This is very important because the following chapters, if you understand this chapter, you will understand hydrocephalus, and also you will be able to understand CSF analysis. So we'll be talking about the introductory part of cerebrospinal fluid. So cerebrospinal fluid is a fluid which is surrounding the brain and spinal cord. So we'll be talking about formation, circulation, functions, compositions, and clinical applications. And then in a subsequent next lectures, we'll be talking about CSF analysis, then how you obtain, that is lumbar puncture, and then in another lecture, we'll be talking about hydrocephalus. CSF is also called liquor cerebrospinalis. Liquor means fluid. CSF is a fluid which is present in cerebrospinal space, means fluid which is present inside the ventricular space and surrounding the brain and spinal cord. And in spinal cord also it is present in central canal. So it is present in ventricles, subarachnoid space, cisterna, that is inside, that is surrounding the brain, and in spinal cord, in central canal, and in subarachnoid space around the spinal cord. There are three membranes. One membrane which is firmly attached close to the brain, that is we call pia mater. Then we have got arachnoid matter. So between brain and arachnoid matter, CSF will be circulating, and outside the arachnoid matter is a dura mater. So there are three layers. We call subdural space, extradural space, subarachnoid space, and then comes parenchyma of brain. There are two lateral ventricles which are there in the cerebral hemisphere, and this two lateral ventricle has got frontal horn, occipital horn, temporal horn, and the body part. And this two lateral ventricle communicates with the third ventricle by a small duct. Then third ventricle in continuity through aqueduct of Sylvius is connected to fourth ventricle. Fourth ventricle has got two lateral opening called foramen of Lusca and central opening called foramen of Magendie. It opens into subarachnoid space and cisterna. And in continuity in the spinal cord as central canal, and it opens into subarachnoid space which surrounds cerebral hemisphere as well as spinal cord. Indirectly, the formation will take place in the lateral ventricle, and it will circulate from lateral ventricle into third, from third ventricle into fourth ventricle, and from fourth ventricle it will go into central canal of spinal cord and subarachnoid space, which is surrounding brain, that is cerebral hemisphere as well as spinal cord. So indirectly, it is extracellular fluid surrounding the brain. So cerebrospinal fluid formation will take place by choroid plexus, and that is by ultrafiltration. Approximately 500 ml is formed per day, or we say 20 ml per hour. CSF surrounds the brain cerebral hemisphere. In adult, the total volume is between 140 to 170 ml, and in children it is 10 to 16 ml. We'll be talking more of an adult. 140 ml of spinal and cranial CSF is there. 30 ml is present in spinal cord, and around 140 ml is present surrounding the cerebral hemisphere and in an intracranial space. We already mentioned the production is around 0.35 ml per minute or 20 ml per hour or 500 ml per day. About 100 ml takes part in circulation, and as the brain is floating in this cerebrospinal fluid, the weight of brain is reduced from 400 gram to 50 gram. That's why we don't feel heavy in our head. Otherwise, the weight of brain is 1400 gram, and it becomes 50 gram because it is floating in cerebrospinal fluid. So approximately CSF is around 150 ml. 500 ml per day is the production, or we roughly say 20 ml per hour, and it is mainly formed by choroid plexus in the ventricle. Very small amount is formed in the ventricle, arachnoid matter and perivascular space. So very small amount is present in ventricles, arachnoid membranes and perivascular space. Choroid plexus are present in the frontal horn, occipital horn and body. Posterior portion of the third ventricle and the roof of the fourth ventricle also has got little amount of choroid plexus. Mechanism of formation is mainly by, we call it ultrafiltration. There will be osmotic outflow of water. Glucose will also move out from choroid plexus into CSF, and some amount of potassium and bicarbonate also moves out of CSF. Indirectly, CSF will contain mainly water, little amount of electrolytes, that is potassium, chloride, bicarbonate and glucose. Protein content is very negligible. Mainly it is by shading of the epithelium, or we call endothelial linings of cerebrospinal spaces. So you can see that choroid plexus is present in the horns, that is mainly body, temporal horn, in third ventricle and little bit in the fourth ventricle. The main amount of choroid plexus which is present is mainly in the body part, and we call as temporal horn. And after formation in lateral ventricles, it will come into third ventricle by foramen of Monro, and from third ventricle into fourth ventricle by aqueduct of Sylvius, and then from fourth ventricle via two lateral opening and one central opening, it will come out into subarachnoid space, and then also it will pass into central canal of spinal cord and in a subarachnoid space surrounding the spinal cord as well as surrounding the cerebral hemisphere, and then it will be reabsorbed into superior sagittal sinus via arachnoid villi. We'll be showing you that. So from this is frontal horn, this is occipital horn, this is temporal horn, this is a third ventricle, and this is foramen of Monro. It will open into third ventricle, and third ventricle, this is aqueduct of Sylvius and also called a cerebral aqueduct, and then it will pass into the fourth ventricle, and from fourth ventricle it will be passed central opening, foramen of Magendie, 2 lateral opening, foramen of Lusca. So this red colored is choroid plexus, which is present in the third ventricle. Little amount of choroid plexus is also present in fourth ventricle, but main it is present in the body part and inferior horn, or we call temporal horn. And this will be the lining of the choroid plexus, and that will give rise to formation by ultrafiltration. And there will be filtration of glucose, vitamins, sodium, chloride, magnesium, etc. will be filtered out. But you can see that there is hardly any protein. So choroid plexus in the lateral ventricle, the main artery is posterior choroidal artery, anterior choroidal artery. In temporal horn, superior cerebellar artery, and in the fourth ventricle, it will be posterior inferior cerebellar artery. So different artery supplies the blood to choroid plexus, and then there will be ultrafiltration. So blood is containing rich in protein, but because of ultrafiltration and secretion, there is hardly any protein content in CSF. So formation takes place in almost all ventricle containing choroid plexus, that is a vascular coat. Ultrafiltration will take place. Regulation of CSF composition will depend upon certain factors. And CSF is derived from the blood plasma by ultrafiltration. So factors which affects the CSF formation, one is CSF pressure itself. Hypoxia will produce vasodilatation, will increase the cerebral blood flow and will increase the CSF formation. Acidosis will also increase the vasodilatation. Hypoglycemia will also increase vasodilatation. And there are other factors like adrenergic and cholinergic factors. Hypothermia, hypocapnia. Hypocapnia will produce vasoconstriction, while hypercapnia will produce vasodilatation. Hypothermia will produce vasoconstriction, so it will reduce the blood supply, and reduction in blood supply decrease CSF formation. The drugs like acetazolamide, furosemide, amiloride, they will have effect as far as decrease in the blood volume, and they will affect CSF formation. Regulation is mainly done by following factors, that is arterial blood pressure, or we call mean arterial blood pressure, venous pressure, intracranial pressure. So if mean arterial pressure increases, CSF formation will increase. If venous pressure increases in superior sagittal sinus, reabsorption of cerebrospinal fluid will be reduced, and that will increase the accumulation of CSF, which will increase the intracranial pressure. And once the intracranial pressure is increased, the CSF formation will reduce, and CSF will be shifted from intracranial compartment into subarachnoid space of spinal cord. It will be pushed out into subarachnoid space of spinal cord. It will also depend upon the blood viscosity, because if the blood viscosity increases, the CSF blood flow will reduce, CSF formation will reduce. Vasoconstrictor like adrenaline, noradrenaline will reduce the blood flow, and vasodilatory factors like hypercarbia, hypoxia, acidosis will dilate the cerebral blood vessel and will increase the cerebral blood flow, will increase the CSF formation. And there is something called as autoregulation. If the blood flow to the cerebral hemisphere is increased, There will be auto-regulation in the form of vasoconstriction to maintain the mean arterial blood pressure, and that will decrease the cerebral blood flow and CSF formation. This protects the brain from over formation of CSF as well as increased blood flow, which can produce complications. But say in case of a hypertensive encephalopathy, autoregulation fails, and once the autoregulation fails, vasoconstriction does not take place, blood flow is increased, mean arterial pressure is elevated, hydrostatic pressure is elevated, you will have a fluid, that is water, will seep out of vascular tree and it will come out into extracellular fluid, giving rise to cerebral edema. We call that as hypertensive encephalopathy. So that will be the thing which will be giving rise to also increase in the formation of CSF. So now we go to how it circulates. We have already discussed. Formation takes place in the lateral ventricles, that is in the body and temporal horn. Partly it is also formed in third ventricle and partly it is formed in fourth ventricle. But from the lateral ventricle, whatever CSF is formed comes to the third ventricle by a foramen of Monro. From third ventricle via aqueduct of Sylvius, it will come into fourth ventricle. And from fourth ventricle, it will pass on into the central canal of spinal cord. And by lateral opening, that is foramen of Lusca, it will pass out into subarachnoid space. And from the subarachnoid space, it will circulate further. We'll show you that particular diagram. You can see that these are frontal horns or anterior horn. This is occipital horn or posterior horn. And these are inferior horn. Inferior horn. So from third ventricle via aqueduct into fourth ventricle and from fourth ventricle into central canal. And there will be two lateral opening of the fourth ventricle, that is foramen of Lusca. It will come out into subarachnoid space. So this will be the appearance in a anterior view. This is the appearance in a lateral view. So if we go through from lateral ventricles via foramen of Monro into third ventricle, from third ventricle via aqueduct of Sylvius into fourth ventricle, from fourth ventricle the central opening called foramen of Magendie into subarachnoid space, as well as through subarachnoid space it will be circulating surrounding the brain, and then by arachnoid villi it will be given back to superior sagittal sinus, and from lateral opening it will be also going to subarachnoid space and central canal of spinal cord, and it will be absorbed back into superior sagittal sinus through arachnoid villi. So this will be very typical. Lateral opening we call as foramen of Lusca, central opening we call foramen of Magendie, and the duct which connects is called foramen of Monro. Foramen of Monro, and this is aqueduct of Sylvius. So circulation, hydrostatic pressure of CSF formation, cilia of ependymal cells, respiratory, that is inspiration and expiration, will have little effect on cerebral blood flow and cerebral flow. Because of vascular pulsation of cerebral arteries, the blood will, CSF will flow from lateral ventricle into third ventricle via foramen of Monro, from third into fourth ventricle, that is aqueduct of Sylvius, and then from fourth ventricle via lateral opening, that is foramen of Lusca, and central opening we call foramen of Magendie, into central canal and subarachnoid space. So lateral ventricles, interventricular foramen, that is foramen of Monro, into third ventricle, from third ventricle via aqueduct of Sylvius into fourth ventricle, and central canal, central opening foramen of Magendie, and lateral opening foramen of Lusca, into subarachnoid space, and from subarachnoid space it will go upward, that is, it will push upward because of inspiration, because of pulsation, etc. And inferiorly, it will enter into central canal of spinal cord and subarachnoid space surrounding the spinal cord. And superiorly from there, it will be absorbed into superior sagittal sinus by this small arachnoid villi, or it is also called as arachnoid granulation. And then from there, via the venous sinuses, lateral sinus, internal jugular vein, superior vena cava, right atrium. You can see now it is from lateral ventricle, it has come into third ventricle, from third ventricle into fourth ventricle, then comes out via foramen of Lusca and Magendie into subarachnoid space. It will circulate surrounding the spinal cord and then it will ascend up, and at arachnoid villi it will be absorbed back into superior sagittal sinus. So these are called arachnoid granulation or arachnoid villi. So from subarachnoid space it will be absorbed into superior sagittal sinus. So this will be the circulation. You can see clearly from lateral ventricles, it will come via the foramen of Monro into third ventricle, aqueduct, fourth ventricle, central opening and lateral opening into subarachnoid space, and then from subarachnoid space it will be absorbed into superior sagittal sinus. So central canal expanding at the level of filum terminale is called terminal ventricle. The fifth ventricle is a median cleft between the two laminae of brain septum pellucidum. It is also called as cavum septum pellucidum. The CSF will be emptied out or drained into a dural venous sinuses via arachnoid villi, or we call arachnoid granulation. And then from there it will be passed on into lateral ventricles, lateral sinus, superior sagittal sinus, inferior sagittal sinus, all will drain into lateral sinus and then into internal jugular vein, and from internal jugular vein into superior vena cava, left atrium. Intracranial cavity will have 1400 ml of brain tissue, only 150 ml of CSF and 150 ml of blood, out of which 120 ml is venous blood and only 30 ml is arterial blood. So you can see the main constituents of cerebrospinal fluid space is 100 ml, of which lateral ventricle is 25 ml, subarachnoid space is around 25 ml, fourth ventricle is only 3 ml, and third ventricle is only 3 ml. So main is present in a cranial subarachnoid space, that is what we call as entire cranial cavity, and lateral ventricle is containing only this much, and spinal subarachnoid space is only 25 ml. So indirectly the major fluid is in a subarachnoid space surrounding the cerebral hemisphere. Main function of cerebrospinal fluid is to provide a mechanical protection, that is hydraulic buffer action whenever we move our head. So the brain will not strike against bony structures. It maintains the stable extracellular environment of the brain. It helps in removing some of the waste products. It provides nutrition in the form of glucose and oxygen. It also conveys the message by transporting hormone, some of the releasing factor and neurotransmitter substances. So it will help in transporting hormones, releasing factors, as well as neurotransmitter substances. And it is providing nutrition to the nervous tissue. It removes the metabolic waste products and it protects the brain from getting injury by hydrostatic buffer, that is cushion against the trauma. That is the main function. Other function, you can say it protects and lubricates the brain. It provides the nutrition and removes the waste products. It modulates the pressure changes. It serves as a chemical buffer to maintain the constant ionic environment. And it transports the nutritional material, metabolites, endocrine substances in the form of, we call, releasing factor, hormones, as well as neurotransmitter substances. So this is a summary of all those. It prevents the contact of delicate neural structure to the surrounding bone and reduces the impact hitting the brain against the hard bones. It reduces the weight of the bone right from 1400 gram is reduced to 50 gram. So massive reduction in the weight. So we do not feel weight in our skull. And we already mentioned transporting the nutrition in the form of glucose and oxygen, chemical messenger in the form of neurotransmitter substance, endocrine hormones, releasing factors, etc. And it takes part in removing some of the waste products. So summary wise, buoyancy, metabolic, blood perfusion, and protection. 4 important. Here it reduces the weight right from 1400 gram up to 250. 25 gram. Metabolic function, perfusion, so providing nutrition as well as removing the waste products, and protects. So combine effects. Cushion, counter coup injury is prevented because of movement, removing the waste products which are toxic. Mainly the blood brain barrier is acting maximum, and this is the function of blood brain barrier system. I'm not going into detail regarding blood brain barrier system. Blood brain barrier is essential to protect the brain. It blocks the chemical and harmful substances, antibodies, drugs, etc. so that you don't get deleterious effect on the neuronal substance present in the cerebral hemisphere. Blood-brain barrier remains intact except at the level of hypothalamus, pineal gland, and at the level of third and fourth ventricle in choroid plexus. CSF pressure is between 70 to 180 millimeter of mercury. This will help in regulating absorption through arachnoid villi, and it will also help in maintaining the CSF formation. If CSF pressure rises, this CSF pressure can rise because of more formation, sluggish circulation, and decreased reabsorption. So if at arachnoid villi there is blockage by any disease like say meningitis, encephalitis, hemorrhage, tubercular meningitis, etc., you will have a blockage of arachnoid villi which will block the CSF absorption. Say if there is a SOL, brain tumor, or SOL, space occupying lesion in the form of abscess, tuberculoma, secondary metastasis, cyst, etc. It can compress the brain and also it can block the circulation and CSF will be accumulated. Also the hemorrhage in the brain tissue can block the small channels in arachnoid villi. There will be some group of people which will have a malformation in the brain because of genetic defects like Dundee-Walker syndrome, or we call Bud cherries, no, sorry, uh, Dandy Walker, I'll come to that. So one is Dandy Walker and Arnold Chiari syndrome. So that will be, there will be a blocking of aqueduct of Sylvius, and that will also give rise to occult hydrocephalus or obstructive hydrocephalus. So this will be the importance. As far as CSF is concerned, in physical, the color is clear, colorless. Turbidity wise also it is absolutely clear. pH is little towards acidic side. There is no deposit, no smell, and pressure is between 100 to 180 millimeter of water. If you look into the composition, it contains little amount of sugar, but it is 60% of the blood sugar level. 60%. Protein content is very low. Maximum is 45, but usually it is towards the lower side. There is little amount of chloride which is being present. If you look at the certain other material like CPK is less than 15, LDH is less than 40, and ADA, adenosine amines, is less than 15. Why? Usually, as we don't get protein, we don't have colloidal gold curve or Pande's test, they are always negative. So protein content is very less and there is a little amount of sugar which is being present in CSF. And the ratio of CSF to plasma is 60% of the plasma sugar will appear in, which was present in blood, will appear in CSF. And as far as microscopic is concerned, no RBC, almost close to zero is a WBC count, and mainly they are lymphocytes. No bacteria, no AFB, no malignant cells, and as there is no bacteria, culture is always negative. And this will be the composition in plasma, and this is the composition in CSF. You can see sodium is almost same, potassium is little less, magnesium is little more in CSF, calcium, chloride is little more in CSF as compared to plasma. Bicarbonate is almost equal, same. Glucose is 60% of plasma level. Then pH is little less in CSF because I think because bicarbonate is relatively less here in CSF. You can see bicarbonate is relatively little less. Osmolality of both are nearly same. Protein is markedly low. You can see protein is 7 gram, while here it is only 28 milligram. And specific gravity is little less in CSF. So this will be the normal composition. If you keep this thing in mind, while doing a CSF analysis, it will be very, very important. As far as the clinical application is concerned, it is very important to know regarding the CSF formation, circulation, and what we call as absorption, because it will give rise to normal pressure hydrocephalus, occult hydrocephalus, and communicating hydrocephalus. It is also important to analyze the CSF in presence of meningitis, maybe bacterial, viral usually we call encephalitis, and tubercular meningitis. It will be very useful. Also in case of intracranial hemorrhage, subarachnoid hemorrhage, and to find out xanthochromia. Quick state test will be helpful to find out the occlusion in a CSF circulation. And in internal jugular vein, thrombosis, etc. So CSF analysis becomes very, very important. You can see this is normal, and you can see here the ventricular space are enlarged. So this is hydrocephalus. This is normal ventricular size. You can see again this is normal. This is enlarged size of the lateral ventricles. And you can see the skull size is enlarged. Sunset sign. Fontanelles is tense and bulging of the fontanelles, separation of the sutures, increase in the circumference of the head. These are all classical signs of hydrocephalus. We'll be discussing in detail. And to obtain a CSF for analysis, we require a lumbar puncture. We'll be discussing separately in one chapter. So I end my lecture here. This was the introductory part of CSF formation, circulation, what are the different components of CSF, etc. So this will be very helpful in subsequent lectures. If you feel this is helpful to you, please press button like. You can give comments so I can improve my presentation. And if you feel this is helpful to you, you can share with your friends. Thank you for taking out time. I know that your time is valuable and I appreciate you for spending some of the time with me. So see you in next lecture.